Unfiltered. Like you're in another world, like you zoned out. You know what I'm saying?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Georgii Speakman, and I am very excited to welcome my co-author today, Carrie Purcell, to the show. So welcome, Carrie. It's wonderful to see you 2 days in a row. Yesterday, Carrie was kind enough to have me on her show. So we're looking forward to having that interview come out soon. But in the spirit of introducing Carrie to you all today, she is so impressive. She's a recognized leader in emerging technologies and digital transformation, serving as both a consultant, a researcher, speaker, educator, and of course now a best-selling co-author of The AI Revolution, which we're obviously going to touch on today. Carrie was also named Toronto's top 50 female leaders, not only in 2023, but also 24, bringing nearly 2 decades of innovation expertise in the intersection of immersive tech, AI, and ethical design, which is incredibly fascinating to me. She was also an early adopter of Metaverse technologies, which led her to co-found, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at Adaptika.
Adaptika.
Adaptika?
We say
Yes.
if you can learn how to say it once, you'll never
Adaptika.
forget.
And so as which was and has been an award-winning VR gaming company that's focused on immersive virtual worlds, which once again is so fascinating to me, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that, interactive experiences and educational environments, which I feel has gone hand in hand with that world, literally. So she obviously has an incredibly impressive and long bio, but let's hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And so without further ado, before diving in, I want to just reiterate that she carries a co-author of this book here, The AI Revolution, which is, yes, snap, Thriving Within Civilization's Next Big Disruption. Carrie's chapter is chapter 24, From Resistance to Revolution, How Organizations Can Thrive with AI. You made a beautiful quote. Well, it's not quite yours, but you utilized it, just like I used, I think, Albert Einstein's quote at the beginning of my chapter, which is AI is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI. And Carrie, we kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday. What is your take on the future of AI here and the fear of like the fear mongering online and just in sort of, I want to say almost majority society, where people are freaking out a little bit about being replaced. And I think that was a perfect preface for what you referenced there, quote wise, to lead into your very, very insightful, informative, intelligent chapter. Tell us a little bit about your take on this and your hopes for the future there.
Yeah, awesome. First of all, it's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you for that generous introduction as well, and a great first question because it is top of mind for so many people, right? So that AI. I think a lot of people will feel and agree that there's immense opportunity, and a lot of people have a fear of job displacement in particular, right? So this push towards efficiency in workplaces means AI can do my job. I'm out of work. What does that look like for the future,
Right.
right? Now, I don't believe that's where we're going for a whole host of reasons. Um, but I understand the fear. I understand that people feel that there's a risk there. What I see AI being able to do, yes, it can create efficiencies, right? If there is, a proven workflow that can be automated. So any repetitive tasks should be automated. That makes sense for us. Um, I actually think that AI is going to open up more time for us to focus on areas that we don't have time for today, that we also have particular skill sets in. Right, humans have a lot of creativity. AI can support that creativity, but it's typically not going to. Without our prompting, without our project management, without our direction, and also um, our review, right? Our having the human in the loop, having that accountability. It's not going to produce that creativity for us. It's not going to produce that empathy for us, although people are working on making it imitate empathy more closely. Um, there are also at this stage a lot of responsibility risks and ethical risks with AI. And that's where the human and the human in the loop is incredibly important in that AI,
Right.
connection right now, in
Mhm.
that AI process right now. So I think that the human role is incredibly important. Um, in in conjunction with AI. I believe AI can amplify our expertise. I
Mhm.
believe it can create efficiency in our roles. I believe it can open up time for us to do more. I believe it can help companies grow, maybe without adding headcount, maybe not. So I see a lot of opportunity there, and there is a lot of research already in this area, although it's new and it's ongoing. So I could say a lot more, but maybe I'll pause there and let you take it back.
Speaking of research, which you just mentioned, I love a lot of the anecdotes and things that you've mentioned in your chapter. But you're currently working with Insight Research Tech Group,
Yeah.
which really does concretize your expertise as a generative AI leader. You've been a prolific speaker and all the rest. Um, I love that you're on that side of the fence, and there are many sides of the fence to AI now, and that's going to continue to grow and proliferate. But what are you seeing as some of these key and core findings? You probably just spoke to some of it, but if you're going to sort of bucket or bullet point some of these key research pieces and findings, tell us a little bit about that and how that is influencing decisions that are currently being made in business, whether that's startup, SMB, or enterprise ecosystems today.
Sure. I mean, again, big question. So I think I'll start with uh, kind of in the field of what we were just talking about, which is kind of that resistance side. And I find this area really interesting when we look at workplaces because there is a disparity between the reasons and the processes that a large enterprise organization takes and the resistance that they face versus SMEs, which hold a special place in my heart. I've spent a lot of time in that field as well, and I really like to support businesses of that size. So, I mean, yeah, and I actually, I'm working on collating a lot of this. I will have, really nice detailed reports and matrices that you'll be able to look at. So to look at your sector, to look at your company size, to look at your AI readiness, and kind of
I
target.
love
Okay,
that.
where am I? What should I expect? How can
Yes.
I do this? Right?
Yes.
But there are a whole host of reasons that we face resistance. That fear crosses a whole lot of them, right? So there is employee resistance on the fear of job replacement in some cases, and not necessarily across the board, but we know it's there. There is a skills gap, right? So it's particularly in smaller organizations. Even if they're ready to jump on board, they may not have the larger tech teams. They may not have the infrastructure. A budget is an additional one, but that does play into that skills gap, right? They just may not have the team and the systems to be able to roll out these larger scale AI adoptions or to build in-house. Um, there are more, but typically on the enterprise level, the budgets are not an issue. Typically, the skills gaps on the adoption side are not as much of an issue. But in terms of usage, which is an area we don't often talk about with adoption, but I'm particularly interested in, right? We put all of this effort and budget behind adoption, and then what happens, right? Um, unless we are really training, unless we're really tracking, unless we're measuring, it may be wasted. It may just be checking a box or answering to the board of directors, but we haven't actually
Mm.
accomplished anything. So I find that usage piece very, very interesting. There's a whole lot of other research around that piece, around all of the layers in terms of both whether people feel confident and comfortable using the technology. And part of that is
Yes.
training and onboarding.
Yes.
Also, what kind of support do they have at different
Right.
managerial levels across their organization and
Right.
so on. So there are a lot of pieces there, but again, I do see I think there is almost a formula that the frameworks need to be updated, and that's a piece I'm excited to work on. But as we update the frameworks, there is a formula that says, your company fits into this, within a series of considerations fits into these categories. And here's your best case, here's your blueprint for how to move this forward successfully, considering all of the adoption and usage considerations for success. So again, an area I could go on and on, but I'll try to
I
keep it
know.
succinct for you.
I think that was sort of not the problem we had yesterday, but part of the experience, which was there is just so much to cover. on this subject matter. And there are so many different layers and angles in which you can talk about AI,
Yeah.
depending on, again, what side of the fence you're on. Are you a developer? Are you a creator? Are you a researcher? Are you this, are you that? Are you whatever?
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on some of these AI blueprint frameworks
Yeah.
and all the rest. I love, because I'm not going to read out all the steps that you've included in your chapter, but I do particularly love step 1 and 2, because I feel like even in the consulting environment and some of these preliminary early stage AI driven conversations you're having with potential clients and counterparts and all the rest,
Yeah.
that these 2 sections are two most important to qualify before sort of moving forward, which includes step 1, identify the right AI opportunities. So you want to obviously define the business problems that AI can solve. You want to assess the problem category and most appropriate AI for the job. That is
Yeah.
a big one,
Yeah.
because do you have a budget to build on an ongoing basis? Do you want a quick one-off project? What are the KPIs of the AI? What are your
Yeah.
budgets? You can have
Yeah.
pie in the sky goals and dreams, but
Yeah.
if you don't have the right budgets and teams to support, just to your point
Yeah.
around building out the solutions, then you're going to be in a pickle.
Yeah.
Look for high impact, high feasibility, low risk use cases. And then that's number 1. But then step 2, you've mentioned align AI to business strategy, which is critical. This is what every single business, to your point, has to focus on, which is ensuring AI initiatives align with company goals, efficiency, customer experience, revenue growth, secure leadership, buy-in to support AI adoption, assign an AI sponsor to champion integration. And of course, there are other steps.
Yeah.
These are all such important considerations. But what I have found, and you've had experience in working in the metaverse space, we talked about Web3 and crypto, NFT marketplaces, publishers, etc. yesterday a little bit. When you have, I want to say, older decision makers within these
Yeah.
organizations that are still writing things down and printing things out and
Yeah.
instructing their assistant or whoever to do
Yeah.
ABC XYZ, which was probably conducive to the way things were conducted back in the 80s or 90s, right? We're just making this assumption that some of these older key decision makers that are responsible for some of
Yeah.
these having to steer and guide what you've referenced.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that barrier to entry? Because we talked about
Yeah.
barriers to entry yesterday. What's your advice and thoughts and insights, feedback regarding all of that, and how to shift perhaps outdated and scarcity and fear-based or whatever? Because if it ain't
Mhm.
broke, you don't need to fix it, right? Don't fix
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
Mentality. How do you overcome all of that when it is applied to everything that we've just sort of touched on?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So I'll reference the chapter in this case because I do kind of lay out a lot of
Yeah,
important
please
concrete
do.
steps throughout the chapter. The blueprint that you, so, and then I'll pull it back to the blueprint that you talked about because those are obviously really important steps. So
Yeah.
in the chapter, I talk about a few key aspects. I actually start with a dystopian storytelling framework, which is something that I use in workshops. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is this isn't going to be for everybody, but I actually urge everybody to just take 20 minutes and try it because what it does is for anybody, it doesn't matter if you have a deep knowledge of AI, no knowledge of AI, somewhere in the middle. It gives you a little bit of insight into, when we talk about sci-fi or we talk about kind of future visioning, like a lot of that is kind of a safe zone to imagine what could be. The dystopian storytelling framework lets you look at essentially in a very safe visioning place what the risks are to your business today with AI in mind and with your competitors in mind.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so let's just level set. Nothing's happened yet, but let's just look forward at what might happen. And we do that as a tool to be able to look at our vulnerabilities, but also say, um, if another organization, if a competitor beside me can use AI or can do whatever competitive advantage you want to fill in to do this versus my company, is that something we should be considering?
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're an expert in it. And I actually tell you, so in my chapter, I talk about doing this exercise, and I talk about having my director team do this exercise. My director team headed up various specialty areas that, I have general knowledge of, they have very specialized knowledge of. So I
Mm,
need to pull in their expertise to say, okay, what's going to happen in your area, right? What's going to happen here?
I
So I
like that.
had the head of production doing that. I had the head of our gaming division doing that. I had the head of our digital division doing that, right? I had our creative director doing it. So I had 6 or 7 people doing this and bringing like incredible insights to each other to kind of fill out that full picture. So I don't need to know anything except my job to be able to get into that headspace. Now, at this point, I kind of push people into, okay, what's the AI mindset? If we're going to think about transformation and re-envisioning small or large, right? Any aspect of what we do in our work, our business, our departments, our teams with AI, how do I get into the AI mindset? A lot of people will say this. I do think education is a piece of it. Okay. So I do think that you need to become semi versed. Now, I give some really nice, easy tips on how to do that. I love podcasts, of course. So podcasts are a really easy way to integrate it, maybe on your commute to work, maybe on your lunch
Yes,
break, whatever it is,
for
right?
sure.
Also, you can listen to those at 1.5 or 2 speed. So if it's half an hour, don't worry. You can do 15 minutes. You can stop, start, whatever.
Hmm.
I recommend a couple of newsletters. These are like, one of them is a daily. I love actually getting that in my inbox daily because it highlights just a few key things that are happening in AI, new developments, things that are in the news, new investments, also new tools that I might want to try with reviews, right? So somebody's put some work into actually testing this out for me. Even if I do nothing with it or I don't open it that day, it gives me a bit of a sense of the landscape of what's happening. So those are some quick, easy ways. Of course, you can research. Of course, you can read books. Of course, you can dig in more. You can take a lot of people that I talk to have taken courses, whether they're micro courses or much longer courses, and
Yes.
I've done all of those. But you don't have to do all of that. Okay, it's getting just a little bit first in what's happening. I think that's key. Now, if you do none of those steps, the next thing I talk about are the different types of people within your organization. And I parallel that to our technology adoption curve. So some people will
Hmm.
be familiar with this. And in the technology adoption curve, you have innovators who are like, they are the first ones to create in this space. Then you have
Hmm.
early adopters. These guys are really supportive, super excited. They're going to try it right away. Then you get to the early majority. Right now, these people are waiting for it to be like a little bit tested, but they're still pretty forward thinking. And then we start to get into the late majority and the laggards. And in my chapter, I like to give them personalities, right? I like to think, okay, what demographic is this in your organization? What role do they play, right? Some of our roles in organizations like finance, for example, might be more risk adverse, right? Those might not, I'm not saying that this across the board, but they might not be your early adopters, right? They may have a lot of regulatory considerations that they want to consider before they're going to jump
Hmm.
on board.
Hmm.
So look at that and figure out who you are, right? If you're a
Ooh.
laggard, right? If you're a late adopter and a laggard, yeah, your first thought is not going to be, how do I lead the charge? But you are going to have people in your organization who are thinking that. Excuse me for 1 second.
No, I love where you're going with this, Carrie, because we touched on it yesterday, where I think I even said that to me, I feel like the journey of AI, the journey into AI is as much a personal self-development one as it is
Yeah.
anything else. And you just hit the nail on the head. You
Yeah.
got to work out who you are
Yeah.
as a part of this on a
Yeah.
personal and professional level. But
Yeah.
anyway, carry on.
Thank you. Yeah. So 100% I'm with you. Now, I'm not saying that you have to change who you are. Okay, so in the book, I talk about my personal experience, and I do talk about moving from being, a little bit more skeptical into an early adopter, into an innovator. I've had that experience. You don't have to do that, right? So if you're a leader and you've sort of described a persona from the 80s or 90s, and they like to rely on their assistant to maybe execute on some of the work, and maybe they're more paper and pen based. So what I'm suggesting is, if you've done this dystopian exercise and you realize you're motivated that your company has to make some change, but you know that you're not the one going to lead the charge. You're not going to go and do the research. You don't want to do the hands-on testing. You don't want to do the education. It's not interesting to you. It's not the best use of your time. It's not the point in your career where you want to spend time doing that. Find the people in your organization, and it can be, find your AI champions. So they are probably innovators and early adopters. They probably want to test things out, try them, report back to you, share
Hmm.
them. right? Show you what they're doing. You might be the one that's controlling, measuring, that's controlling budgets, that's saying, here's the threshold. Um, but you don't have to be hands on, and you can still be the one that's actually managing that whole change.
I love.
And yeah,
Go
yeah.
on. No, no, no. Go. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Obviously,
not at all. I was going to say that that actually pulls us pretty much back to that blueprints, right? So
right.
if you've put any of those steps into place, right? If you've put a little bit of thought into any of those steps, now you're ready. Again, you might have an AI champion, you might have a head of tech, you might have a head of innovation, whatever the role is that's leading everything, taking on the kind of the heavy lifting for you. But now you're in a position to look at that AI blueprint and make the business decisions, right? So in that blueprint, that first stage that you brought up is for me the most exciting stage. I mean, arguably the end is also pretty exciting. You get to see things working, but that
Yes.
first stage is where we just dream, right? So all of these are kind of opening our mind, our perspective, our education level to say what's possible, and then get into a really, really carefully structured exercise that says, okay, of all of these options, or as many as we want to consider, let's very carefully weigh them, right? We do what we call a pain and gain chart, but it can become quite a detailed matrix. And you mentioned a lot of this, right? So here's where we look at our expertise and our budget. This is where we look at risks. This is where we look at legal. This is where we also look at low hanging fruit versus,
Hmm.
right? So that impact piece.
Hmm.
Sometimes there is a low hanging fruit that's going to take priority. It's like, hey, we could get that out in 2 months. This is going to make, projected X number of impact, X number of whatever. We're actually going to put that ahead of this big exciting one that we know is going to make a major business impact, but we could we could reallocate all of that time and resource if we put this first one forward. So anyway, I find that stage really, really exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So many people think of AI as something for nerds, geeks, engineers, someone
Yeah.
stuck behind a computer all day, every day. What sort of advice or perspective would you offer to the everyday human out there in today's society to help them better level set what AI can and should mean for them? Because you make a great point in your book. You say, today we have at our fingertips some of the most powerful AI tools in history, and they are easier to use than ever, which we all
Yeah.
agree, would all agree with. While the foundations of AI have been evolving for decades, breakthroughs in computing, etc., data availability have propelled us into a new era. But
Yeah.
why do you think so many people are sort of trapped still in this mindset that they have to be some expert mad scientist stuck behind a computer? And how would you help shape shift that perspective?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent question because I think, AI can seem complex, it can seem intimidating. We hear there's all kind, right? There's machine learning, there's algorithms, there's neural networks, there's like what does it all mean? Which one is which? How does it fit together? I could talk about that, but it doesn't matter. What I'm talking about in the potential, particularly at the beginning of that chapter, is a lot of real world practical
Mhm. Yes.
benefits,
Yes.
right? So yes, a lot of my work at Insight Research, a lot of what I talk about in the chapter is work focused. But at the beginning of the chapter, I talk about how AI is integrated in your email box, right? Your Gmail, it's integrated in your phone to open up, to unlock with your face. Sometimes you're using your fingertip. It's in our music recommenders, right? It's in our
Yes, I love that you
television
reference
recommenders, right?
Spotify. Yeah.
So we're kind of afraid of something that we're already really
Yeah.
relying on and we might love. And I think that's a fun place to start because a lot of what makes AI, generative AI in particular, and LLMs really so fun and exciting is those everyday applications, right? It's
Mhm.
taking a picture of everything in your fridge and then asking for a meal plan. And that meal plan might be very specific to your tastes or your diet or what ingredients, what cuisine you usually like or what ingredients you have at the store across the street, etc. And having the meal plan created, then having the recipes created. I used to have a plugin to Instacart where my ChatGPT could then create a shopping list that would go into my Instacart that could literally be at my door in an hour for anything that I didn't have in my meal plan, right? I mean, these are just kind of really
Yes.
fun, practical things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more creative ways that people use them with children, with storytelling, with education. So I have a lot of fun with all of the possibility there.
Mm.
I don't know if I answered your question. I think I
No,
got
you
lost
did
in
absolutely.
the things
Yeah.
we could
No,
do.
no, 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 absolutely, you absolutely did. Metaverse technologies, it's really fascinating to me because there was a explosion there for quite a number of years of where
Yeah.
everyone was like going into sort of the literally entering the metaverse through
Mhm.
mostly through gaming, but other applications. I know that even art galleries were creating metaverse experiences so that people could travel through and have the art gallery experience without having to be there in the flesh and experience, you know, leading art galleries in other parts of the world that perhaps I'd never traveled to as a destination, all the rest. Explain how you sort of got into that space, and all the rest, and how that had it ends up informing a lot of your your journey, experience, and knowledge into AI.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, thank you. So I have a bit of an unusual career path because at the very beginning of my career, I actually started in publishing. Now, it was educational publishing, and it was during a time of massive digital transformation.
Right.
So that informed really the rest of my career. We went from books to the advent of ebooks, but then we really started to get into, at the very beginning, CD-ROMs, but eventually very smart platforms.
Yeah.
And so that, from kind of an educational lens, got me into the possibility of what technology could do. There were a lot of other really interesting things that happened during that time, right? The business transformed from like really, really brick and mortar to we went to smart warehouses where we just reduced our footprint. We went to drop shipping instead of, all kinds of, print on demand, all kinds of things like that. Lots of interesting system updates and so on. But on the product side, I saw the possibility of what technology could do. I kept seeing us push the limits. It was so interesting. But there were a couple of things that were wrong from my perspective. One was we weren't meeting the pace at which our clients, our customers were
Hmm.
their needs were kind of updating, right? We weren't quite meeting their needs. We were behind. We were lagging. There were some new entrants, smaller businesses that were coming out that were more agile, and
Hmm.
they were able to in some cases, but I was really intrigued in it. And the second part for me was I didn't have that really deep understanding of technology, which, as I've said, I don't, as a business leader, I don't think you need to, but I wanted to dig in, right? I wanted to just really understand the technology a little bit more. So the first half of my career was that educational publishing ed tech piece. I shifted mid career to a research institute where I could dig into the technology piece a little bit more and really understand what was available and what we could use and how we could solve problems. And I will say it was like eye opening. It was literally that, like, a veil was lifted experience, because there was so much that I hadn't seen that was kind of behind the scenes, right? But also we were working pre-commercial, at least 5 years pre-commercial. So we were working on things that people weren't, that wasn't out in the market yet. There was a business problem we were solving, but nobody had seen the way we could solve it yet. And believe me, they would not have been ready to adopt it yet, but it was very cool. And within that space, I discovered virtual reality. I discovered gaming technology. I discovered some earlier ways that we were using AI. It's developed exponentially since then, but still some pretty cool ways that we could use AI. And I also discovered a problem in the education field, and a business partner
Yes.
who wanted to help solve this problem.
Right.
Now, this was pre-COVID, but we were still very interested in online learning, and we were interested in solving the problems of community, of engagement. The fact
Hmm.
that most online learning is people just watching a video. It might be live, but even when it's live, and I teach online. I teach part time online, and I've taught online for almost, gosh, 18 years now, I guess. Um, so that's changed as well. Even
Oh.
teaching, even teaching online live. I mean, you really lack it. You really lack that interaction in many cases, and there are so many other flaws that we found. So we thought, okay, can't we make it more like in person? Can't we make it more interactive? Can't we
Right.
make it so that people feel like they're a community and they can interact and engage? And metaverse
Mm.
technology lent itself very well to that. So I know you were going to jump in. I'll pause for a moment.
Oh no, but that's
Yeah.
just like such an incredible journey. I think, like, myself, and you're way ahead of me, but just your appreciation for innovation, future tech, and just like general problem solving. And as we discussed yesterday, you know, the sheer nature of AI is to solve business problems, but you've had that background in the metaverse space and arena that has really lent
Yeah.
itself beautifully to your, you know, now thriving career in the AI space. Um, you mentioned in your book, in your chapter, and yeah, in your book, our book, safely imagining disruption. I
Yeah.
love that. I really, really love that because it comes back down to the fear piece as well. But what advice would you have to, again, the everyday human, for their personal and professional lives? So they could be a CEO, founder, just anyone and everyone. How
Yeah.
would you encourage them to best safely imagine disruption? Just a
Yeah.
beautiful statement and reference.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at here is, yes, there are practical and logistical constraints that we are going to work within. There are going to be people constraints, budget constraints. There are going to be responsible and ethical constraints that we have to take very seriously. But don't start there. Right. We have this fun, when we look at the process, and even in that AI blueprint at the end of the chapter, we have this fun model for who should be in the room at different stages. And at the
Mm.
early stages, we don't bring in a data scientist, for example, because the data scientist's job is going to be to tell you everything that you can't do. And
Mm.
and that becomes relevant later on, but we can't make decisions based on that at the beginning, right? We can't envision what can be if we put too many constraints on ourselves at the
Right.
beginning. So I love problem solving, as you know. So let's start with that bigger vision. Let's keep it as a vision, right? So before we start any pilots, any little tests and iteration, this is the safe piece. Is like we're really just imagining at this point, but planning. It's not planning. Um, but we're imagining what can be in a before anything's happened. Then we'll pump it through some of those other filters, right? So we are going to look at the logistics, what can actually be done, but we'll problem solve. We'll get really creative. If we think there's a budget issue,
Mm.
let's see if we can fix it. If there's a people issue, let's see if we can fix it.
Mm.
The responsible and ethical piece I take very, very seriously. So it is not ignored. But at the beginning, don't don't focus on it.
I
Because
love
again,
that.
it's a layer that we're gonna
Right.
bring in. Yeah.
But that almost speaks to like don't lead with fear because
Yeah.
same thing, like if you go
Yeah.
in with too many restrictions and barriers to entry and no no no,
Yeah.
then it almost like you're going to probably your natural reaction to that is going to
It's
be
fair.
fear or retreat, which means
Yeah.
sort of you have to go. I mean, you reference in your chapter, which I love because I do too, which is top down, inside out, and
Mhm.
having that bigger picture vision and ideation, and then you
Yeah.
know working through it from there, whether
Yeah.
it's an idea or a specific problem or what have you. So um, I could listen to you talk on the subject of AI for hours. I can ask you a million more questions, Carrie. But as you're aware, for this collaborative interview series for the AI Revolution, our wonderful little book here, which we absolutely recommend you go out and buy and treat as your first little physical AI Bible, which you can parallel to your own journey into AI. Um, so we'll sort of look to wrap up our dialogue for today here. But did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share, Carrie?
Yeah. Again, so first, thank you for this really enjoyable conversation. We covered a lot of ground here. I think in terms of advice, I really think people need to have some fun here. Again, like I'm not pretending this isn't serious. I'm not pretending that we don't have to take it seriously. We will, but start by having a little bit of fun. Play around, whether it's
Yeah,
personal or professional.
yeah,
There's 100 ways to do it, but pick a tool. Obviously,
yes,
ChatGPT is a very popular one. Doesn't have to be that one,
right.
and just play around a little bit. Ask ChatGPT, how can you make my meal planning easier? How
Mhm.
can answer X? You don't have to know what you're doing with it yet. Yes, you can do some training. Yes, you can get some consulting. There's lots of ways but just play around, because I think you'll find I think you'll have some fun with it.
I love that. So it's almost like lead with some curiosity. Don't be afraid. Lead with some curiosity and have some fun.
Yeah,
So I love that. That's excellent advice.
yeah.
So thank you very much for joining Unfiltered today. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing and experiencing what we're all able to accomplish in the coming future, the coming days. and seeing where the success of the book obviously goes and travels to. It's already become a bestseller in the US and Germany, if I'm correct. I
And
did see that it
Canada.
became
And
Canada. Holy cow pants. So 3 territories, international territories. Australia, hurry up, get your shit together. We're waiting on you as country number 4. But no, thank you so much again. All of Carrie's links will be in the description there. So don't forget to buy your copy. Links in bio for all the rest, and stay connected. And of course, stay unfiltered, everybody. And good luck with your little AI journey.
Unfiltered. Like you're in another world, like you zoned out. You know what I'm saying?